two things, two aspects of my personal career that will play a role in what we're going to be discussing. Namely, I'm a former academic or former professor, and I work in business now. And what I want to reflect on with all of you today is really the relationship between how we can make a difference in business in today's world by applying some of the academic frameworks you might be working on in the university right now. And I also hope that what we can do today is give you a bit of an idea, a framework, a seg into the projects that you're going to be working on in the hackathon, namely the question of how do we generate public value, or how do we generate value for the planet, planetary value, public value, whatever the term is you want to use there, by applying the logic of businesses to it. And that's really a hard question, a question businesses have been grappling with, but also societies have been grappling with for many years now. And we've, over the time, we've gotten better at bringing those two together. And what I want to do today is tell the story of how we in Amazon, or in Amazon Web Services, and have been dealing with that, and where we've been struggling, where we've had successes, and where we think we can truly live up to the broad responsibility that we have towards our planet, towards future generations, and towards the societies we work and live in. So that's a bit of what I want to do with you today. Really excited about this. Unfortunately, I can't see you, so I'm as it always is with these Zoom conferences, I'm speaking a bit into a void. So we'll see how we do the interactive part there. Do follow me on LinkedIn if you care, or on Twitter, or on Instagram if you particularly care about pictures of mountains, because that's essentially what I post there. I'm a mountain runner, and so I go there, and then I always take a phone and take some pictures, and they're shared there. Philipp Mueller on Instagram. Anyway, so much to the pitch there. So broad responsibility is our peculiar Amazonian way of dealing with this challenge. And if you want to roughly look at the challenge over time, in the 1950s and the 1960s, companies or big organizations, multinational companies, were thinking about their responsibility towards the society they were based in, or the societies they're based in terms of a concept we call philanthropy. So philanthropy was seeing that there's something that needs to be done, giving money to either, and at that time it could be anything from the Philharmonic Orchestra to the poor in the neighborhood. So very unstructured, not business focused, not sustainable, not there in the long run. That there was a time that this seemed enough, or that society accepted that as enough, until the 1980s and 1990s, when there was a big debate in the business field on shareholder value. So the only responsibility of a business is towards its shareholders versus stakeholder value. So the idea is that there are other stakeholders that have a relevant interest in the business, and therefore the business also has a responsibility towards. That might be employees, that might be the local communities the business is acting in, that might be the environment, and or societies. So there was a debate in the 1990s moving from shareholder value stakeholder value and maximizing stakeholder value in a business. And then in the 2000s, especially coming out of the Harvard Business School, and you've alluded to it, like I do admit I'm part of that group around Michael Porter. Michael Porter in 2011 came up with this concept of shared value. And so we've had shareholder value, we moved to stakeholder value, and now here comes this idea, shared value. And what you see there is in how framing actually matters to the possibility spaces of how we can make a difference on this planet is, if you think about shared value, you bring together the shareholder value with the public value. So the idea is making the two, making public value creation financially sustainable. And this idea of, and there's a lot of research on this ever since, that companies that also do good or that do good, they in most cases or in many cases produce a higher financial result than companies that do not do so. And therefore the argument that Michael Porter made in this shared value paper was that there are two ways of how you can generate public value. One is by looking at your supply chain or your value chain and figuring out how you add value there. So that could be anything about ensuring that, for example, farmers in the supply chain will get a decent return on their product, i.e., for example, in coffee. And the second part, where how Michael Porter was thinking about this, was in terms of the value proposition itself. So having something that produces that reduces or that produces positive social impact or public value in this case. And that might be if you produce a better form of public transportation, it might be if you would produce a cleaner form of energy, etc. These types of questions. So really what Michael Porter opened up our minds for, and this is the type of thinking you will need for your projects, is the ability to see, to reflect on the planet, on the possibility spaces you're confronted with, and then see what actually could be done there. And now, long intro to a very specific use case. I work for Amazon Web Services, and here some of the examples I use are also from Amazon overall. So I work for one of the bigger companies on this planet, and this company has a peculiar way of operating. And what I'm going to tell you is the story of how we integrated this shared value thinking into our operating model, into our way of getting stuff done. And I'll talk a little bit about where we struggled, where we did well, where we really made a difference. And maybe again, that will allow you to reflect on what you want to do in your projects in the hackathon. So I framed this as broad responsibility. What is that? Moving to the next slide, is our company does something very peculiar, even though you've probably heard of it, but you've not taken it serious in other contexts, is anything we do is anchored on our leadership principles. We have 16 of those, starting with the original one, which was customer obsession. But there are all types of other leaderships principles. They're and they have several functions. One is they show how we do stuff. It's said well on the slide, so they're an authentic representation of what we do each and every day. Each and every decision we make is anchored on them. My decision to join this webcast today was anchored on the leadership principles, mainly in this case on think big, because I do think we need to. This is like working with you guys allows us to scale things in a way we couldn't do it in other ways. It's anchored on learn and be curious, namely the leadership principle of I want to learn from working with you on the climate hackathon and seeing how far we can bring this thing and so on. So these are the things always in the back of my mind as I'm reflecting on what I'm doing. They're a practical reference to how we make decisions, and they're a shared vocabulary. Like I started 4 years ago, and at that time we were roughly around a few 100,000 people. We're more than 1 million now. And a lot of people have been hired after me, and like a lot of people have been hired before me. But really what the leadership principles give us is a vocabulary to work together on hard, wicked problems. So they're essentially, and this is why you see the spiral, the DNA spiral here, is they're essentially the DNA of our organization. Now, the interesting thing is on broad responsibility, or on our role on this planet, we've not had a leadership principle for a long time. And we've created it together in starting having discussions on this in 2019, and finally in 2020 in the summer it came out, and it's worth looking at because by now it drives decision making and decisions like our investments in wind energy, and these are multi-billion-dollar investments, or decisions on what we do in like smaller situations are based on this leadership principle. And people who join us, and this might be interesting for those of you who might want to work for a company like ours, or especially for us specifically. We select on two things. One is functional fit, and obviously you need to know what you for the job. But secondly, we mainly select on cultural fit. And cultural fit for us means, do you fit our leadership principles? And so essentially in the interviewing process, you're going to be confronted with the leadership principles, and you'll be responsible for telling stories from your life, from your experience, how you've always acted according to them, or how there's a good fit between you and the leadership principles. And so again, they have the functionality of selecting. So we select on them. And secondly, they continuously drive our decision making and authentically represent what we're doing. And so it's worth looking at this, and you've probably read through it for yourself, but let me do this again. We started in a garage, but we're not there anymore, which means we were a small company, and we still sometimes feel like a small company, like a startup, but we're not a startup anymore. We're big, we impact the world, and we're far from perfect. So we have to accept, and so we're telling ourselves here, we're big, what we do impacts the world. When I talk to you now, that impacts the world, and we're far from perfect. we're not the best. We need to continuously there's already a job in there. There's so much we need to do to become better. But first, before you go there, you say we must be humble and thoughtful. So we need to reflect on this, and even about the secondary effects of our actions. So sometimes we think we really add value as a company, and there will be secondary effects. Think of it's great if you ensure that everybody gets everything in time fast. It's not great if all of us as humans pollute too much of our planet. So think of not only the direct impact you're having, but also the secondary effect. Our local communities, and here's the stakeholder thing that I've been talking about before, right? Our local communities, so where we're based, but also the planet as a whole, and future generations need us to be better every day. So we have a broad responsibility to our local communities, but not only to them, not only to the countries we work in, but also to the planet as a whole. We need to think in planetary dimensions, and future generations, because future generations do not have a voice on this planet in this time. We must begin each day with a determination to make better, do better, and be better for and then again, our customers. And this is where it links to the first leadership principle, our employees. This is where it links to the second to last one, the Thrive to be Earth Best Employer. Our partners, these are the people we work with, and the world at large. So moving beyond those categories, there are other categories we are responsible for, and we need to think about them at the micro, meso, and macro scale. And what we must do is we must end every day knowing we can do even more tomorrow. So anything we do today is fantastic, but it is never enough, because there's so much work we as humans can do. And then it ends with that, like a very personal note, which addresses all of you, all of us. Leaders create more than they consume, and always leave things better than how they found them. So that's a clear call for that. Being a leader does not mean you have a privilege, a right to take out more than you can, but you have the responsibility and to actually give back more than you could. So I did a bit of a deep dive, which by the way is also a leadership principle we have, on this leadership principle, in the hope that it might help you reflect on what you're going to be doing in the upcoming weeks in the hackathon, and how you want to take up the broad responsibility, which comes with the privilege you have in being part of the hackathon, to make a difference on this planet here. So now let me be super practical, because we're business and we think in programs and we do stuff, and like some of the stuff works and some of it doesn't. Go back to here, right? We're big, we impact the world, and we're far from perfect. We're far from perfect, right? But thinking about this is like, how did we break it down for us, so that we can operationalize, so that we can execute against that? That's going to be slightly different from what you're going to do in the hackathon as you're just like starting with a small idea, because you're in the garage right now. So you're not big and impact the world yet, but like you have the possibility to do so. But again, maybe learning from how we've been doing it might be interesting to you. And so what we did is, there are really three. We did a survey, we worked with our customers, we did a sentiment analysis, we We had focus groups, we worked on this. And anyway, in the end, we came down that we figured out there are really three things where we can have a meaningful impact on the planet. And we, in this case, is AWS, and where we can create shared value or create public value for our customers and beyond, the societies we live in and beyond. And so we cut it up into three S's. One is sovereignty, one is sustainability, and one is societal impact. And what I want to do in the next 15 minutes or so is walk you through what we've been doing there. I'll be faster on some things and more precise on other things. What really matters to me in the discussion we're having, or in this presentation right now, is that you understand the framing, the logic, and how you can utilize this type of thinking for your projects. So the first one is a topic which probably doesn't come to mind at first when you're thinking about a climate hackathon, but on the other hand, it actually is at the core of a lot of the debates we're having, and a lot of things that are really necessary in today's world, namely the sovereignty, i.e. the ability of customers or of countries to get their stuff done, to make sure that they get done what they want to do. And here's our definition, which is ensuring asserting legal jurisdiction over data, or rendering data inaccessible to foreign jurisdictions. So now that's a very legalistic definition, but if you think about it, it's like, who controls the data is an important question in a networked world, and ensuring that those who own the data can control the data is something that's important there. And obviously, if you're a cloud provider, this is what we're doing. And so this is also important for you as you're going to use data on the cloud. It's important that you know that your data and your processes are yours, and no one's going to steal them from you, neither foreign governments, nor AWS, nor malevolent third-party actors. And so in order to address that, there's really three ways of doing it. One is contractual measures, which is contract laws, legal stuff. There's process measures, which is how to design processes, and like who gets to access what and when. And then there are technical measures, ensuring that data cannot be accessed. You can find that if you want to dive deeper on that. Happy also to share these slides. You can go into each of them: contractual, process, technical. This is a bit more interesting, because again, as you're going to be designing your projects, you're going to figure out that there are things where you're going to be responsible for in securing your data, and there are things we're responsible for. This is something we call the shared responsibility model. You kind of see it here on this slide. So we're responsible for essentially the security of the cloud, and you're responsible for the security in the cloud. And obviously, we don't leave you alone there, giving you lots of tools to do that. But again, think in terms of this shared responsibility. Again, if you want to dive deeper into this discussion, there's a lot of sets of things to discuss. One is encryption, obviously. There's identity and access management. There's monitoring and logging, so ensuring that you know when, who had access when. And then there is something that goes slightly more on a meso level, or on meta level onto that, namely looking at patterns, and from the patterns deducing if there was something that went wrong. Next to that part, there's confidential computing, also a term that you should just know. Everyone should. If you think about, like, when data is at rest, it can be it can be secured through encryption. When it's being moved, it can be secured through encryption. But when it's being processed, it needs to be, in most cases, it needs to be decrypted so that it can be worked on. And the solution for that is something we very often call confidential computing. Essentially, this is a system that protects the data from being accessed by anyone while it is being processed, by designing systems that don't allow access even from the operator, i.e. Us in this case. There's another way to think about this in terms of certifications and attestations. Here's a small list of what we do. And again, with that, you have like a broad brush overview over the sovereignty topic, which is a really relevant one. And can be thought of on the customer level and on the national level, but it's a topic that matters to you as you're going to be dealing with data, but it's something to think of as the ability to execute. So, and not the ability to not be connected with anyone else, to do it all alone, because normally doing it all alone won't work. This is, I think, again, another one of those lessons you're going to learn in the hackathon. So then moving to sustainability, and a few thoughts there that you might find interesting. So sustainability is a topic that obviously has been driving humanity for thousands of years. If you go back 3,000 years in the Mediterranean, for example, there were a lot more forests than there are now, and there's great writing by Roman authors on that something needs to be done against the deforestation that comes from the shipping industry 2,500 years ago. And if you go to some of these places, you see that they've not recovered their forests since then from the Greco-Roman shipping, cutting down trees for the shipping industry part. So clearly the sustainability discussion is something that's been with us for a long time. However, it's only in recent years, and a lot of people argue that it's almost too late now, has it become as relevant for every decision maker in any and every organization as it has now. And obviously climate change is what's driving this discussion. If you then break it down to who is asking for it, and so how does value creation, public value creation, then become part of what you want to do as a business? Remember, I said Michael Porter distinguished between shared value in the value chain and shared value as a value proposition. Then you can see it's customer demands. Customers are willing to pay more for goods that are CO2 neutral, or that are healthier, or that are not produced by child labor, or that are so it's a customer demand. Government regulation is coming in. But it's also, and then flipping the side, it's also employee demand. People are not willing anymore to work for companies that destroy the environment. And then beyond that, there's the financial markets. Financial markets have learned that companies that are environmentally sustainable bring a bigger share. And also there is on the investor side, there is a group of investors who are not willing to invest in anything that destroys the planet anymore, which seems obvious, especially if you're a pension fund and you're going to be around for the next 100 years. Then destroying the planet is probably not the smartest value proposition. But again, these drivers that also push us towards sustainability come from very different directions, and that allow us to sustain to position ourselves competitively if and when we make sure that we're sustainable. The second point, which is interesting, and especially also for us as AWS, to wrap our minds around it, is digital transformation, because we figured out that the combination of virtualization and working with data allows us to get stuff done in ways we've not gotten stuff done before, and therefore allows us to make processes more efficient, and thereby clean up the world, decarbonize, move towards it. So we're in a time in history where we have a really big problem, but we also have a very, very cool solution at our hands. However, that solution also needs a lot of energy. So we need to think about this in a very, very smart way. So clearly, there's a huge opportunity for organizations, both public sector and private sector, to build on that. And clearly, as all of you are thinking in the hackathon, you're thinking about what can be our contribution. And it's like not what could be our little contribution, but what can be our meaningful contribution to drive this change. And so but driving this change is hard because it takes a long time. Like normally we're used to thinking in quarters or in years, and sustainability takes a much longer time. So we need to now also figure out how to bring together the mechanisms we have to structure how we move things forward. It's very often KPIs and reports to shareholders, etc. Bring them together with like a very long-term goal for humanity. So let me show you how we've done this. So in 2019, we've created something called the Climate Pledge. The Climate Pledge was really our realization that we're big and we have an impact on the world, but we're not big enough that if we do something ourselves, it's going to have enough of an impact to change the climate. So we created, and secondly, we found out that we as a company actually do not yet have all the knowledge we need in order to fully decarbonize. But we also saw that, like I've talked about it, government regulation, that there's something called the Paris Agreement, which says until 2050, all economies need to be decarbonized. And so we decided, well, that's a goal, but it's not enough. So let's move this 10 years earlier and say we're going to achieve that until 2040. So to be net zero means that if we still use or emit carbon, then in some other place we need to make sure that we sequester it again. And achieve that until 2040. And the Climate Pledge is essentially, think of it as a think tank or a platform for companies to join, to share the knowledge. This is pre-competitive knowledge because it's knowledge that we all need to have as humans, and then to move towards decarbonization by 2040. And again, by bringing together, by now I think we've over 100 signatories, and companies like Daimler-Benz, some big automotive companies are part of that. By doing that, we're we're leveraging also A, the knowledge, and B, the size, because that way we're becoming relevant. We for ourselves are on our path to be fully on renewable energy by 2025. So 2 more years. We might hit the goal a few months earlier, but who knows? And we've set up a climate pledge fund in order to support projects, maybe projects also that will be coming out of your climate hackathon. Here are some of the companies that have signed it. The climate pledge has these 3 principles. One is regular reporting, which means if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. It means actually getting rid of carbon. And whenever you need to work with offsets, I've already talked about those, then they need to be credible, serious. And so we have over 200 signatories, 26 industries and from 21 countries. Here's a bit of the type of work we're now doing. These are like all individual programs run by real people with like real teams and doing stuff. And you see like how hard it is because it's also very multidimensional. So first one here is like sustainability reports. So manage it, like map it, track it, and manage it. Second one that's interesting is like where we're trying to change the industry. We've ordered several 100,000 electric vehicles. Some of them are on the street right now, 500 in Germany, which is the numbers I know, but like I think several thousand in the US already. And we ordered them from different companies, but Rivian is a startup that was only created a few years ago. And by giving them a big contract for 100,000 vehicles, they were able to scale up faster than they could. We've become the world's largest corporate buyer of renewable energy, which mainly means investment in offshore wind parks. And we're like working on all our own products to ensure that they have a lower ecological footprint. We're working on things like, and you just see the very different spheres we're working on. And think about it, you need architects for building in a more sustainable way. You need packaging specialists for like reducing the package you get from Amazon. You need wind energy specialists for buying wind power. So again, it's like a very diverse set of potential jobs for you guys, but also for what a company like ours needs to actually invest in order to get there. And I hope you're already thinking like, oh my God, what could we be working on as we're working on our climate hackathon journey here. Yeah, let's see if what I tell you, going to the core of what we do in AWS is we designed a chip that our cloud runs on, which is way more energy efficient than all others. So we take a lot of cost for us, for our customers, but also energy usage and thereby carbon out of the system by smart design. So in a way, and that's where you also see like how as Michael Porter said, it's smart business to do good or to create shared value, because by reducing the carbon needed over the lifetime of the processor, we're also saving money, and we can give that back to our customers who can then compute for less. Yeah, so we're like a bit of a marketing on the cloud. Obviously cloud, because it's more efficient, more centralized, is way more efficient than any other compute you have. So clearly this is what I've talked about in the beginning when we're discussing the difference between digital or we're just discussing that we have two things on the table right now: digital transformation, one, and the climate crisis on the other hand. And by bringing them together in a smart way, we can actually we can solve the climate crisis, and the cloud is an important aspect of that. So I've talked about data because data is what helps us get stuff done in the world, and so data is part of what you can do there. So one way how you can think about data, and again, there might be a lot of great ideas in your heads already in what you could do is visualization and ensuring that things can be managed. Irrigation is one of those. I think globally over 90% of all water that's being used in irrigation is actually just evaporates and never actually has an impact. And as you know, that irrigation is one of the biggest uses of water on this planet. So there's clearly a lot that you could imagine there, or think of a building and like having sensors. You've probably been in buildings where air conditioning was going on all the time, and there was no one there, or the lights were on, or etc. So lots of stuff you can do there. Our HQ2, our new headquarters in Washington DC, is an exemplar of what can be done there. And again, and this is something that you might be working on in your projects, programs, ideas, is like the smart use of machine learning and artificial intelligence in order to get some of the stuff done. So just as you notice, I'm rushing through this because we're almost at the end of the time. This is being used in all types of ways globally. And now let me just spend the last minute on the third of our S's, the social impact. I wanted to spend most of the time on sustainability because that's really what's at the core of your hackathon. But again, social impact is like a wider view on the question of how we come into a sustainable world. And what I really wanted to celebrate here is one team we have, which is the Global Social Impact Team, and it's amazing the type of work they do and like how they link it to the broader picture. And so they link it to the sustainable development, Millennium Sustainable Development Goals, and then translate that into real work that has a real impact on the world. And again, you see what we've discussed before. The reason why companies do this is because it's a must for the societies we work in, but it's also something our employees want. And here you see again, and maybe this might help you as you're developing your projects, the tenets, the principles this team is using. So it's like, let's focus on specific missions. Let's use what we have and what you have in the hackathon, the builder mindset. So see a problem and then see the Lego blocks you have and build something. Think about scalable impact, how things like how you don't solve just like one little problem, but how then that can be scaled up, and like always work together with the community. So these are the issues they're working on. And again, that might help you as you're thinking about like what's an issue we want to generate an initiative around. And this is how they try to then scale it up and see what it does, is namely by by using open data, again, something open data might play an important role in your project, figuring out how you can develop an social impact solution that actually then can be reused somewhere else. I did a lot of work in Mexico, but then the work that we did there was also applicable to Turkey, for example. And so let me end with a beautiful example, Digital Earth Africa, which is a program to make Earth in Africa more accessible, so the data, and then to use it for very specific projects, just as anything from cleaning up to flood planning, droughts, and etc. So again, using data, making it available to a lot of people, and then doing very specific projects to make a difference. So I rushed through the end a bit, but I think overall the message is clear, which is we live in a world where creating shared value is what really matters. You're confronted with a challenge, which is climate change, but you also have a very cool tool at your disposal, namely digital transformation and the cloud that empowers, that gives you functionality at your fingertips. By bringing those two together, you can really, really make a difference. And I expect your programs in the very near future to actually have an impact on the planet at a planetary scale. So thank you so much. I think there's 2 questions in the chat. Not sure, it's 52 now. So I'm not sure if we can, oh, it was, hi, Dr. Philipp, you have 4 minutes left. And I think I've used those 4 minutes. So I think we're through it. So thank you so much. It was an honor and a pleasure to be talking to you. And I look very much forward to seeing fantastic projects.
Thank you, Dr. Philipp. It was a pleasure to have you too. It was very informative and very beneficial. I learned a lot personally. Thank you for joining us today. And for attendees, we will have the next speaker in the next 7 minutes. So stay tuned.